Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing a complete autopsy on the wild 150-year history of a true Finnish empire, Nokia. We're talking about a company that literally defined modern communication for a whole generation, right? Only to just vanish from our pockets. So we're going to dig into the exact decisions that built this massive tech titan, the deep systemic failures that brought it crashing down, and, surprisingly, the secret pivot that actually brought it back to life.
Okay, let's dive right into this. How exactly does the world's most dominant phone maker lose its crown? I mean, if you lived through the early mobile revolution, Nokia was absolutely inescapable. They were everywhere. So how does a pioneer go from owning practically a third of the entire global phone market to becoming the ultimate business school cautionary tale? And more importantly, how do they secretly reinvent themselves into a modern infrastructure giant?
To figure this out, this explainer is going to map out their journey chronologically. We'll hit 1. From paper to phones. 2. The golden age of Nokia. 3. The smartphone blind spot. 4. Bureaucracy and the fall. 5. The Microsoft deal. And finally, 6. Rebirth and future outlook. Let's get into it.
Section 1. From paper to phones, a history of adaptation. To really understand Nokia's insane ability to adapt, we have to rewind way back to the 19th century. Long before microchips or code, this company was actually built on the physical resources of Finland. Back in 1865, a mining engineer named Fredrik Edestam set up a basic pulp mill right by a local river. Fast forward a bit to 1922, and the company partners with the Finnish rubber works. Yeah, believe it or not, Nokia spent years making rubber boots, tires, cables, and even military gas masks. Then, in 1967, a massive merger officially forms the Nokia Corporation. They were dabbling in forestry, rubber, cables, and this crazy new frontier called electronics. By 1982, they dropped the Mobira Senator. This was their first mobile phone, and guys, it was a massive, nearly 10-kilogram beast meant for cars. Obviously a long way from a sleek smartphone, but hey, the foundation was officially set.
Moving on to Section 2, the golden age of Nokia, the telecom shift.
So, moving into the 1990s, CEO Jorma Ollila makes a really bold call. He decides to ditch the rubber and power divisions and go all in on telecommunications. And this was huge. They played a foundational role in developing the GSM standard, the actual network protocols that made global mobile communication possible. But to really grasp how big they got, look at this. By the year 2000, Nokia alone made up 4% of Finland's entire GDP. 4%! And it doesn't stop there. They accounted for a staggering 21% of the country's total exports and made up 70% of the Helsinki Stock Exchange's market cap. I mean, Nokia wasn't just a business anymore. It was quite literally the beating economic heart of Finland.
Through some incredibly smart global partnerships with network providers, they managed to capture a 30% global market share by the turn of the millennium. 30%! And they did it by obsessing over the user experience. They built these insanely durable, super user-friendly phones. Think of the legendary 3310 or the advanced Nokia communicator. We're talking about phones famous for surviving massive drops, going days, sometimes weeks on a single charge, and honestly, they'd probably outlive most of the smartphones we use today. At this point, Nokia felt practically invincible.
Which brings us to Section 3, the smartphone blind spot, missing the next wave.
But here's where things take a turn. When Apple and Samsung suddenly hit the scene with sleek touchscreens and advanced operating systems, Nokia's massive past success turned into a massive blind spot. They were standing at the top of the mountain, but they were completely looking the wrong way. And they didn't just miss one single trend. It was a domino effect of systemic miscalculations. First off, they stubbornly stuck with the old QWERTY keyboard style, basically brushing off the clear consumer demand for touchscreens. When they finally realized, okay, we need a modern OS, they doubled down on their own in-house software, Symbian. But Symbian was, well, clunky. It was notoriously hard for third-party developers to build on, making it totally incapable of competing with the rich app stores Apple and Android were rolling out. And get this, Nokia actively avoided jumping ship to Android because they were terrified of competing directly with Samsung on the exact same turf. They just vastly overestimated their own brand loyalty, figuring the Nokia name alone would buy them enough time to catch up.
But the market? The market does not wait. As soon as consumers got a taste of the seamless, developer-rich ecosystems of iOS and Android, they dropped Nokia's buggy Symbian system like a bad habit. Plus, Nokia totally failed to build a cohesive umbrella brand to fight back against heavyweights like the iPhone or the Galaxy line. As a result, consumer trust just evaporated. It triggered a devastating, unstoppable freefall in market share. This incredible hardware pioneer simply couldn't figure out how to pivot into a software-first world.
Section 4. Bureaucracy and the Fall. Stifling Innovation.
Now, while everyone on the outside was pointing fingers at bad hardware and outdated screens, the real rot was actually happening deep inside the company. It was a suffocating internal bureaucracy that absolutely choked out innovation. Just listen to this quote from a former employee. It perfectly captures a tragic internal dynamic. Nokia had built this super complicated matrix structure that just alienated everyone. The top executives, they lacked the actual technical engineering chops, which was totally different from their Silicon Valley rivals who knew exactly what went into building a modern smartphone. Because the top brass at Nokia didn't really grasp the software limitations, they kept demanding impossible targets. So you had these middle managers who were literally terrified of losing their jobs, actively hiding the truth about just how bad Symbian really was. Former employees described it as this toxic Soviet-style bureaucracy where hundreds of amazing innovative ideas were just tossed in the trash and honest feedback was totally suppressed.
Section 5. The Microsoft Deal, a Desperate Lifeline. So dealing with a revolving door of CEOs, a broken management structure, and revenues that were just falling off a cliff, Nokia desperately needed a lifeline. I mean, they were bleeding cash and market goodwill every single day. Enter Stephen Olop. He was a former Microsoft executive who came in to take the reins as CEO. Trying to stop the bleeding, Olop makes a massive bet and aligns Nokia exclusively with Microsoft's Windows Phone operating system. But the Windows OS was also struggling to get app developers on board. So, in what a lot of industry insiders now refer to as the deal of death, Nokia ended up throwing in the towel, selling its entire mobile device and handset division to Microsoft in 2014 for over $7 billion. For the public, the story was over. Nokia, the proud Finnish giant that originally connected the globe, couldn't handle the smartphone revolution and got completely swallowed up.
And finally, Section 6. Rebirth and Future Outlook. The Infrastructure Pivot.
But here is the craziest part of the whole story. While the entire world thought that 2014 sale was the final nail in the coffin, Nokia was quietly pulling off one of the greatest pivots in tech history. Stripped of its failing consumer phone division, Nokia looked back to its roots: infrastructure. Today, the gap between what people think Nokia is and what it actually is mind-blowing. You probably think Nokia is dead, right? Well, actually, they're the world's third largest network equipment manufacturer. Through some really smart acquisitions, like buying Alcatel-Lucent and the legendary Bell Labs, Nokia totally transformed into a telecommunications infrastructure powerhouse. More recently, their stock prices hit 16-year highs. Why? Because they are absolutely booming in AI infrastructure, cloud networking, and they just landed a massive partnership with NVIDIA to build AI platforms for upcoming 6G networks. So no, they aren't making the phone in your pocket anymore. They're literally building the invisible web that makes your phone actually work.
When you look back at this incredible 150-year journey, from a little riverside paper mill to a rubber boot factory to the king of mobile phones and now to a massive AI network pioneer, it really makes you think. Success can breed some serious complacency, right? If internal bureaucracy could completely blind a dominant giant like Nokia, we have to ask, are today's reigning tech empires destined to make these exact same mistakes, or will they learn from the tragic fall and the very quiet, very real resurrection of Nokia? Let that sink in. Thanks for watching The Explainer, and we'll catch you in the next one.